Hi, Victoria here from the Zest for Success, the Bookkeeper Hub and HBA and Compass. And again, I'm sitting in my car making the best use of my time. This morning I'm at swimming training rather than a school pickup, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to have my daily chat. So yesterday we talked about your product and your processes. Today we're going to talk about business viability. And I'm going to try really hard not to bore you to tears with numbers because, yeah, I'm an accountant, I'm a bookkeeper, and I get off on that kind of stuff, but I understand that not everyone does. But before you start your business, before you go and rent premises, buy stock, print T-shirts, hire staff, whatever it is that you're going to do, you need to make sure that your business is viable. And when I say viable, I mean is going to bring in enough money and make enough money out of whatever product or service that you sell to cover your overheads, pay you a wage to live on, and then pay back whatever startup capital you get wherever that comes from. And I know we bootstrapped the Bookkeeper Hub, which means that we basically put one credit card aside and said this is going to be our seed funding and everything we have has to come off that. So we needed to make sure that we could pay that back in a reasonable term because credit card interest is really hard, really high. But when you start up businesses, the funding comes from all over places. And I'm going to talk about that in another chat that we're going to have. But it doesn't matter where it comes from. You've got to make sure that you are viable enough that you can repay that in a short period of time or the time required by the bank. So when we're talking about viability, it comes down to a cash flow budget. And I get that not everyone gets off on budgets, but I'm talking about a simple budget to make sure that what comes in will cover everything. So when we're talking about expenses for a budget, there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. And yeah, I'm sorry if it's boring, but it's really important because there is a big difference between them and the way that they're treated. So the first one are your fixed costs. So fixed costs are things that don't change week in, week out, or change depending on the amount of product that you're selling. So things that would be fixed costs would be rent, full-time staff, electricity, printing and stationery, computers, anything like that that doesn't change. So you need to work out an estimate of what your fixed costs are going to be for your business. And that's going to be hard in some instances because you may not have the experience to know what your electricity or your telephone bill is going to be. And that's where talking to an existing business owner, an accountant, a bookkeeper or a mentor can give you an idea of what type of figures you need to budget for to cover these expenses. The next type of expense that we're going to talk about are variable costs. And that sounds like a really horrible accounting term, but what they are the costs of you doing business that change depending on how much product or how many services you sell. So for a plumber, it may be the amount of materials that he's got to buy to do the jobs that he's going to do. For someone selling stubby coolers, it's the cost of the individual stubby coolers that he needs to cover. And when you think about that, you go, oh, well, stubby cooler is just $4 and I'm going to sell it for $6. That's easy. But there's little things that come into it which come up when you're looking at what your budget is and how viable your business is. Because if you're starting off small, you don't get the same kind of discounts that big businesses get. If you're buying 100 stubby coolers, it might be $4. If you're buying 100,000, it might be $2. So you need to have a think about what your variable costs are and do a little bit of research into these things as to what you think they're going to cost that you need to cover. So what you need to do is to have a spreadsheet which has your sales less your variable costs, which gives you a gross profit, then your fixed costs, then we take off wages for yourself, and then we take off loan repayments to pay back your startup capital. And if you can see that your business is going to be in a positive position going forward, you know you've got something that's viable. Now, we're going to get into budgeting much, much deeper down the track and the tools and tricks to do it. I just needed to give you an idea of how it works. Just before you go, just want to have a bit more of a dig into those fixed costs and gross profit because they're pretty heavy. Variable costs and fixed profit. try again, variable costs and gross profit, because they're accounting terms that most people, their eyes glaze over. I get that. But just to put it down into layman's terms and to try and explain to you what it means. So I'm going to go back to my stubby cooler example. If I know that I can get stubby coolers printed to sell for $4, and then I know that I can sell them for $6, then I make $2 out of every stubby cooler that I sell. 2 divided by 6 is 1/3, which is 33 1/3. So what that means is for every stubby cooler I sell, I make 33%. And then that money can be used to pay off my operating costs, my rent and my electricity and my staff wages and my wage. So when you're working out your viability, it's better to work from the bottom up. So you start with having zero money left at the end of the month. Then you put in all your fixed costs. Then you put in a total, so you know what that is. And that's what your gross margin needs to be, which is how much sales less product that you need to cover your operating costs. Then if you know what the percentage of costs are that your stubby coolers are, so 67%, you can work backwards to know what your sales are. And then it's up to you to make a decision as to if you can make that level of sales to make your business viable. So I'm hoping that you can, and I'll have a chat to you tomorrow.